Hey!
Hey, I'm CJ,
And I'm Robin.
and welcome to the Cozy Kitchen.
Come and make yourself comfortable here with us by the fire.
Let's chat about baking, friendship, and cozy hobbies. And if there's time and enough tea, maybe we'll even unravel some traumatic backstories.
I mean, there should always be enough tea.
Hey, Robin, how are you doing?
Hi, CJ. Well, I'm having a heck of a time lately, let me tell you.
Do
I
tell.
I baked a cake that was as much of a learning experience as it was a not learning experience, and I just need to use today's episode as a vent/therapy session.
I'm here for you. Tell me the gory details.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. So, okay. It all started perfectly innocently. I have been craving a really decadent chocolate cake for a while, and I don't typically bake a whole lot of cakes. I have done more sourdough baking. Every once in a while, I'll bake muffins, which are technically cake, but I've not had much luck on the muffin front either. So I went to go bake my cake, and I did everything that I was supposed to do. I
Mhm.
had all of the right ingredients. I had my kitchen scale. I had a good recipe from a blog writer, recipe writer that I use all the time. And so I just thought very naively, oh, this is going to be fine. I've baked cakes before. Everything will turn out great. I'm so excited for this. And note my surprise about 45 minutes later, when I look into the oven, the timer says that it has about 2 minutes left, and my cakes are completely sunk in the middle. They're almost concave. And I'm just like, wait, I had all the right ingredients. I read the instructions through thoroughly. I measured everything to the gram. What
Mhm.
the frick happened here? And
Mhm.
so I want to talk today about the trouble with troubleshooting your bakes, because when I go online or even to a person, whether you're going to an AI or Google or a person who has been baking for a long time, the problem with asking a simple question of why did my bake do this usually results in at least half a dozen different answers. And that is the most wonderful yet also most frustrating part about baking, is that when something goes wrong, it could be anything. It could be so many different things. And it's so frustrating to know where to even start. Like first you're dealing with the emotional exhaustion of putting time and effort and mental energy into baking a thing, and
Mhm.
then it didn't work, and then you have to play detective and figure out, like, okay, well, what's going on here? Why didn't this work? And so I wanted to vent about that a little bit today. And I thought that maybe we could also talk about our own trials and errors, and maybe give some advice to newer bakers or people who are at that point where they're frustrated, they don't know what to do, and talk about some small changes that they can make that can help mitigate those weird issues that they might be seeing.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm on about today.
Yes. So tell me more about this cake. I've had the same experience before where, I think it's rising well, and then halfway or close to the end, it's just like completely deflated, and that also kills your enthusiasm and disheartening, and you hate yourself. uh,
Thanks, first of all, thank you for validating this, because you are, like, as far as I'm concerned, you are an amazing baker. You know what you're doing. You've been baking for a long time. So the fact that you have also run into this issue does make me feel better. And let me ask you, like, when you are faced with that kind of situation, what do you do? Like, what is your first course of action? Like, what are some feelings you have to work through? Like, give me the goods.
Oh my god. So long time ago, maybe like, I don't know, 15 years ago, I was trying to make macaroons, like the French little cookies with the filling inside.
Mm.
And I had the hardest time. Like, I would make multiple batches and they would just come out flat. Like, they weren't raised, they didn't have the foot. It just didn't look like what you buy at a store. And
Mhm.
I was determined. And the feelings I had was just like, I am a complete failure. I
Aw.
would be very hard on myself. But I
And
think
that's
as
tough too.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, as time, I think you grow up and then you realize that
Mhm.
not everyone's gonna hit it on their first try. And I think it's
Yeah.
a mindset thing. We just have to
Mhm.
treat each time as a learning experience. So that's what I've come to as far as like handling failures in my baking and cooking these days.
Yeah, and I think that starting with the macaroons, or macarons, I guess, is like those are notoriously very finicky. And talk about troubleshooting because for that one, it can be anything from you didn't whip your egg whites enough, you whipped them too much, you didn't have the right levels of almond flour. Like there are so many different ways
Mhm.
that macarons could go wrong
Yeah.
and so just kudos to you for trying it because I think that it should be applauded for trying something and for expanding your baking horizons.
Yep.
But also kudos to you for realizing eventually that this is not necessarily an issue of self-worth. This is just something that it happens and everybody's got to learn from somewhere. Everybody's like nobody comes out the womb knowing how to make macarons. And if we did, then it wouldn't be special. So
So tell me more about
so
this cake.
yes. All right. So like I said, I did everything that I was supposed to do with it. I had my scale, I measured everything out to the gram, and I trust that my scale is correct. And I think that it is because I've had luck with other recipes where I've had to use the scale, so I think the scale is fine. But yeah, it was just I thought everything was going well, and then it just wasn't. And so whenever I saw my cakes collapsed in the middle, basically, just having a
Mhm,
hissy fit in the oven,
mhm.
I flew to the internet and I said, "Hey, internet, why did this happen?" And it was I got so many different answers, and the one that really stood out to me was the high altitude answer because
Mm,
we are living at, I believe we're at about 5,000 feet above sea level, and
mhm,
that does have an impact on your bakes, and it is not a factor that I have really been able to understand, learn about, mitigate whenever I go to bake, especially like so cookies and breads are usually okay. It's when
mm,
I get into cakes, muffins, things of that nature that I
mhm,
really end up in these situations where
mhm,
stuff just doesn't rise. And so I did learn, and I think you and I were talking about this before as well, that when you're at a higher altitude and you're baking at a higher altitude, you have to cut your chemical leaveners in half. So if you're using baking powder, baking soda, you have to basically cut those in half. So now I'm sort of over my frustration and now my curiosity has returned, thank God.
mhm,
And now I want to try maybe not a whole cake again, but I do want to try maybe like muffins or cupcakes or something so that I can play around with just halving that and seeing if that ends up working.
yeah.
So, yeah, but it was very overwhelming to go online and just see like there could be so many different answers. There could be the heat in your oven because as we've
Mhm,
discussed before on this podcast, you cannot depend on your oven to accurately tell you what temperature it is. So it could have been that. It could have been the leavening in the bakes. It could have been having the right ratios of ingredients. It could have been using a cake pan that is the wrong size or shape. It could have been over aerating the batter or under mixing it. It could have been like rotating the cake pans at the wrong time. It could have been the cake pans themselves, because I've heard that if your cake pans are darker or lighter, then that can also impact your bake.
Hmm.
And I just want to speak to how simultaneously helpful and also unhelpful these lists are.
Yes.
Because it's like, where do I even, like, you're telling me that I have to try and bake this thing a dozen different ways to play detective and find out what went wrong? So I would love to talk a little bit about the ways that you mitigate those various factors. Are there some things that you have done that are tried and true methods that,
Hmm.
like you can't possibly predict every single scenario that could go wrong, but are
Right.
there some things that you do that kind of help to, like I said, mitigate any of that craziness? Because I have a couple of ideas of what I want to do next time, but I would love
Uh-huh.
to hear from the resident expert.
No,
What you
no. I
typically
mean,
do.
I'm also a learning, like still learning myself, but I typically like to it starts from foundations.
Mhm,
Always start with a well-regarded recipe. And
mhm,
these are time tested. They've been through the trenches. And oftentimes I'm going for a professional baker that
mhm,
has like a real business. And if they come out
mhm,
with a cookbook, then I trust them. So, for example, the tartine cookbook that I gave you, right? And those, I have never had any issues with those. So
mhm,
always go for a good recipe. If you're going off the internet and you find yourself, let's just say you really like Sally's baking addiction and you've had success, but not necessarily all of her recipes have been tested, like well tested
mhm.
in different conditions, like high altitude. Does she even bake in high altitude? Who knows?
She
Um,
does not. I found that out because I was reading through the comments and somebody did ask that, and she was like, "No, my recipes are not made for high altitude baking." So,
mhm.
that's a good one. Mhm.
Yeah, so, like, the good recipes are really well worn in all situations. And then if you trust the recipe, so you could take one, like, let's say you want to do chocolate cake. I would try to find as many chocolate cake recipes online as possible. If you don't have one reliable one that you know will always work for you, then
Mhm.
you want to triangulate. So you want to, um, well, baking's a little bit different. So this is for more cooking. You can pull from different recipes and then create your own. Baking is more of a science. Like it has to be
Mhm.
perfect going in because it's not gonna, you can't experiment
Mhm.
inside the oven. Um,
Yeah, that is very true.
um, so start with a good recipe. Then if you trust the recipe and it still turns out poorly for you, first sit down and it's not your fault.
Thank you.
It's okay.
I
Something went
appreciate that.
wrong. That's fine.
Well, and I would like to just say the nice part about the cakes was that they did taste fine. Like the texture of them was fine, the only problem was that they just didn't look good.
Mm.
So, like of all the things that could have gone wrong, but yeah, I think that this is making me feel better. Thank you.
You know, that's a perfect. Like when you told me about the cake tasting good, it's just a matter of aesthetics. It
Mhm.
reminded me of a story. This Michelin star chef in Italy, I believe he came out with a book called "Never Trust a Skinny Chef." Um,
Oh, nice. I like that.
but
That's funny.
one of his sous chefs in his kitchen was they had created a dessert that was beautifully decorated and somehow in the midst of the craziness in the kitchen one of their chefs accidentally spilled it onto the table and it just like splat
Oh
and I was
no.
like what do you do now and the sous chef just takes it and is, this is a beautiful mess, let's put it on a plate and serve it. um
Oh my
So
gosh.
even the professionals, they will have mess ups and they embrace it.
Mhm.
So, I
I
mean, for
love
your
that.
cake,
Do you know what the dish was? I'm so curious.
I'll have to find it. It was actually in a documentary, I think. So, I'll have to find the
Ooh.
film and send it to you.
That's so neat. I would love to see it. And that very much rings true with a lot of the baking media that I tend to follow. So, we love watching the Great British Baking Show. And one thing that I've noticed throughout all of the seasons is that the Paul Hollywood and Prue Leach, or whoever is the other judge, they typically prefer that a bake taste good over the looks. Like, the looks are also very important. People are judged on how pretty their bake is. But I think that more often than not, if somebody's going down, it's because their bake just did not taste right. And I think that they do favor the taste over the appearance.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
it's honestly true. Like, I would much rather have an ugly dessert that looks terrible. It looks terrible, but it tastes really good versus a beautiful dessert, but somebody accidentally switched the salt and sugar. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Ah.
so
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least if it looks ugly, but it tastes good, you can
Yeah.
still get enjoyment out of it. But
Yeah. It's
yeah,
the
that
way you
also, yeah.
Yeah. It's the way you like present it. Like you can so I've made a rum cake. And typically that rum cake for that particular recipe, it always worked well for me. But it's usually in a bundt pan. And in
Mhm.
this case, I had decided because I was serving like, I don't know, 20 people, I wanted to make a big version of this. So I made it into a sheet pan. Oh boy,
Okay.
I got that so wrong. That thing did not come out the way it did wanted it to. I mean, it tasted fine,
No.
but I took it out and it like broke into all sorts of pieces.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh,
And
that's so
so
sad.
I was so bummed and I was like, what do I do now? I'm feeding all these people this cake and what I did was made it avant-garde. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put
Ooh.
this into this weird shape and a little tower of cake with like the I had a caramel topping that I made. So I drizzled it on top and then I added a little gold flake. I was like, this is what I intended.
Oh my gosh, and I love that because that's, like, such the mind of an artist. It's like, it's so artistic, and it's like, "No, now it's purposeful. This is what I intended all along." And I love that. I love that you don't get so discouraged that you're just like, "Well, I guess we just don't have cake."
Yeah,
Because that was what
fine.
happened on one episode. I think it might have been season 1 of the Great British Baking Show, where this one guy got so mad that his bake didn't turn out well that he just binned the whole thing. Like, he just tossed it. And
No.
he got out that same episode, like, he was voted out of the tent because the judges had nothing to judge. And believe me, I have been tempted. I've also had my moments where something just it turned out very ugly, it didn't taste good, and I did put it into the trash.
Mhm.
But if you can find a way to make it work, then that's okay. And also, I would even go so far as to say that not all bakes have to be beautiful and magnificent. I mean, look at bread pudding. It is
Mhm.
a delicious dessert, but it, like, looks wise, it doesn't look like a whole lot. It looks like a hunk of bread. Like,
Yep.
there's just not much to it. So it's okay. But yeah, I love this whole lesson of figuring out what to do when a bake goes wrong. It comes with giving yourself grace and giving yourself permission to laugh at it, giving yourself permission to find ways to still work with what you have. And I think that that's the mark of a true baker, is just saying, okay, how can I learn from this? A. B, what do I do with it? And C, how can I move on from here? So
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. So CJ, let me ask you this. If you could give any advice to newer bakers who might be intimidated about all of the things that could potentially go wrong when baking, what kind of advice would you give? Are there certain things that you would recommend that they do before they even start baking? Just what would you suggest that they do if they want to try to mitigate as many issues as possible before they start baking?
So I'm no expert, but
As you, I think you're very I think you got lots of expertise.
I find that like the things that when it does like when I troubleshoot, like I'm looking in a direction that is often not the right direction. Maybe I think that like it's the temperature, or did I mix it like too much, or it's always the solution that I end up figuring out that, oh, this is what why it failed, is always something that surprises me. So
Interesting.
I find that you have to be very open-minded and treat it like a science experiment. And when you do try to experiment, always only change one thing at a time. You're a scientist. You are
Mhm.
trying to isolate variables. It could be that, and what I would do is pay attention to very minute details. It could be that the butter was just not cold enough, or
Mhm.
the eggs were not room temperature. You took them out of the fridge and they were still chilled. Those are the surprising things that make a difference, and you just didn't even realize it wasn't even on your radar. It's like in like you weren't even conscious of these things. And because there are so many things to consider, it is almost impossible to figure that out yourself.
Mhm.
So that goes back to me like go find a different recipe that is better. Um,
Yeah.
what about you? Like, what were your thoughts of this, your latest experience, and how you're gonna fix this?
Well, first of all, I love your scientific approach to getting an answer because baking is a science and it does mean learning what overmixing actually looks like. What does it look like? What does it feel like when something's overmixed versus undermixed? Like, for example, like you said, the refrigerated eggs, or is the butter too cold? Is it too melted? I think that those are all really important. And like you said, they're small, they're subtle. You wouldn't think that they would make that much of a difference, but because baking is a science, they absolutely do make a difference.
Yes.
So I love that you're coming at it from a scientific standpoint because that is the way that you do it. And I think that it's okay to have different experiments. It's okay to look at different recipes. And I will say that when you find a recipe that works, you save that bitch. You save it and
Print
you
it
don't let
out.
it go.
Yeah. Laminate it.
And so, yeah, I feel like that's definitely a great way to go about it. I would also say to get a thermometer for your oven so that way you have a much more accurate reading on what your oven is actually temped at, so that way it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's right where you need it to be for the entirety of the bake. So I would, yeah, invest in an oven thermometer. They're not super expensive and they really can save your bacon. I probably should put mine back in the oven and I haven't because it just it's it wants to fall all the time. So I think I just need a better one. I think I need one that's a little bit more stable
Mhm.
because it has just like a hook and I have to hook it on. But yeah, the fact that ovens are made to not reflect the actual temperature is a crime in this day and age. I feel like it shouldn't. We have so much technology for so many things. Just give us ovens that are reliable. Like the oven that I have now, if I set it to bake my sourdough at 450 and then bake my sourdough, take it out of the oven, and then I go and set it again to 350 to bake something else, it shouldn't beep 3 seconds later telling me that it's already at 350. That's no, that's stupid. So I would say get an oven thermometer
Yeah.
and also get a kitchen scale because that will also I feel like there's so much discrepancy that can happen when you
Yep.
have a recipe that's, oh yeah, add 1 cup of this and 2 cups of that.
Hmm.
Um, Having an actual kitchen scale where you can see it says put 219 grams of all-purpose unbleached flour into the bowl, you
Yeah.
know that it's going to be exactly 219 grams.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Exactly.
I would say those would be helpful. And I also think that it can be helpful to watch people bake, like watch baking
Yeah.
tutorials,
Mhm.
watch people
Yep.
actually do these
Yep.
recipes.
Yep. Yep.
And I like I have a very hard time learning just visually like that, but there is a little I do get a little bit more confident when I can see
Mhm.
somebody actually doing it before I attempt it
Yep.
blindly, I guess. That's not the right way to say it, but you know what I mean.
Yes, yes. Oh, I wanted
Mhm.
to add on the oven thing. Always do a test bake in terms of figuring out like the various regions within your oven. So it not necessarily because some ovens will be like hotter in one section that's on the upper deck on the right side, or some sections
Mhm.
are like hotter on the lower deck. Each oven has its own kinks and quirks and stuff. And
Mhm.
so
Which again, in this day and age of technology is a crime. Just make it work.
but that's the
Sorry.
reality. So you've got to just like make a batch of cookies and look at how those cookies turn out. Maybe the one in the back
Mhm.
right is done more like quicker than the ones in the front. And then you know, oh, that part of the oven is hotter. Um,
Interesting. How would you go about doing a test bake for cakes for something that maybe it's not on a tray, maybe it's in like muffin tins, or maybe it's in the round cake tins? How
mhm.
would you recommend? And would you want to just do a little, like a small bit of the cake batter? Like, how would you do it for cake?
Well, so the test bake for the cookies is only just to see regions, and that applies once you do one test bake, it applies to across all baking that you do. So you don't
Oh,
need to do
I
it
see
for
what you're
each thing.
saying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. So, but just with cookies, you can see, like you were saying,
Hmm.
this quadrant seems to be that it gets hotter faster. This
Yep.
one, the cookies are underbaked, so it's not as hot. And is that why you rotate whenever you can tell which section
Yes.
of the oven is hotter? Like that's why
Yeah.
you rotate your cake pans?
That's exactly why they say rotate your pan. And if you don't find if you find that your oven cooks very evenly, then you don't need to
Mhm.
rotate.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that is also good to note. I feel like my oven typically is pretty even, honestly. Like I haven't noticed a whole lot of weirdness with any trays of cookies that I've had.
Mhm.
But something to pay closer attention to the next time I go to bake something because everything seems to come out evenly, but now I'm gonna keep a little closer eye on it.
Yeah, yeah. So are you gonna attempt this cake again?
I absolutely will. I will attempt it once more. I would like to maybe make it in cupcake form, because
Mhm.
I don't feel like having a whole cake in the fridge again this week. And I feel like having cupcakes will be easier to distribute for any taste testers that may
Mhm.
cross my path. So that might be what I end up doing. So yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely, even cupcake form, I think it will be helpful to have all of these tips and to keep going. So
Yeah. Are you gonna try anything different this time?
yes, I am going to cut the amount of chemical leavening in half, and I'm also going to rotate the cupcakes just to see if that makes a whole lot of a difference. And I'm gonna put my oven thermometer back in to make sure that it's at the right temperature.
Mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely.
But because I do have faith in this recipe. A lot of people have commented and left reviews on it. I've
Mhm,
had a lot of success with Sally's Baking Addiction in the past, but I might also want to try something out of the Tartine cookbook just to see if it makes a difference, and see if maybe it ends up tasting better, maybe I end up liking another recipe better. So
yeah,
I might try a couple different things next time.
yep, and that's the thing with baking, you just keep baking.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, because you mentioned that you made macarons before real quick. I wanted just to see, like, have you Once you've had your failure with the macarons, have you tried them again and have you had success?
Oh, yes, I've had success. And the thing that tipped it for me, that something clicked in my head, right, was that the meringue I was making needed to be Italian meringue. And that's what works bulletproof for me. I was, before then, I was making French meringue, which does not use candied like sugar. Like basically, you make a almost caramel for the Italian meringue, whereas the French
Mhm.
meringue, you just put the powdered sugar in and you just mix it. Italian meringue requires that you cook the sugar until it's almost like caramel and then pour it into the egg whites. And that's what did it for me.
Awesome. Now you've had redemption and now you know what to do going forward the next time you make that. You make your macarons.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
love that. Thank you so much for the vote of confidence and for just letting me vent a little bit. And if anybody in the audience has their own baking fails that they want to share, anything that they've learned, please put it in the comments. We'd love to hear it.
yeah, yeah. And we would be happy to help troubleshoot for you as much as we can.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here to help and if you just want to vent about something that didn't work, we're here for that too.
Yeah,
So,
we're all ears.
yeah, but thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to have you sit with us by the fireside, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yes. I'll have a good one.
Yeah, yeah, you guys have a good one, and CJ, I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
That's it for this episode of Cozy Kitchen.
We're so glad you stopped by. We can't wait to see you the next time we sit by the fire. See you next time.
Next time.